President Obama and Governor Mitt Romney are broadening their critiques of one another as their nominating conventions approach, with a political battle now fully engaged over jobs, outsourcing, and taxes. The presidential candidates hammered away at each other today, each accusing the other of changing the subject. President Obama stepped up his charge that Governor Romney would ship American jobs overseas.
There's a new study out by nonpartisan economists that says Governor Romney's economic plan would in fact create 800,000 jobs. There's only one problem. The jobs wouldn't be in America.
And Governor Romney said President Obama is ignoring his own poor job creation record.
What does it say about a president whose record is so poor that all he can do in his campaign is attack me?
Romney has been on the defensive over reports that he continued to receive compensation from Bain Capital well after he said he left the company in 1999. But government filings indicate he was still involved as late as 2001. Democrats and even some Republicans are also pressuring Romney to release more than the 2 years of tax returns he's promised.
John McCain ran for president and released 2 years of tax returns. John Kerry ran for president. You know, his wife, who has hundreds of millions of dollars, she never released her tax returns. Right. Somehow this wasn't an issue. The Obama people keep on wanting more and more and more.
Over the weekend, Mr. Obama said he won't back down from his scrutiny of Romney's record.
No, we won't be apologizing. Mr. Romney claims that he's Mr. Fix-It for the economy because of his business experience. And so I think voters entirely legitimately want to know, well, what exactly was that business experience?
Asked today if the president should apologize for suggestions that he's been dishonest about his time at Bain, Romney stood firm.
I think when people accuse you of a crime, you have every reason to go after them pretty hard, and I'm going to continue going after him.
The disagreement has morphed into musically themed video wars.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies.
The Democrats featured audio of Romney singing America the Beautiful from a campaign event in January, while the Republicans used the president singing to accuse him of cronyism.
So in love with you.
Meanwhile, Romney is turning his attention to his next major decision, choosing a running mate. He spent the day raising money in Louisiana with Governor Bobby Jindal, one of several current and former governors considered to be on his short list. One senior Romney advisor said he could name his pick by the end of the week. And to help us sort through the summer haze of the presidential campaign, we are joined by Jonathan Martin, senior writer for Politico, and Molly Ball, staff writer for The Atlantic. Jonathan, help us explain this Bain back and forth. At the end of this weekend, was there any more clarity about when he left and if he left Bain?
Well, no, and I think that's part of the reason why there's still questions out there about what exactly his status was at that company. Now, look, the Romney campaign wants to say this is purely a matter of President Obama's desperation, his attempt to divert attention from the economy. But in politics, when you're defending, when you're explaining, you're losing. And for the last week, he has been doing just that. And it's a remarkable turnabout. Consider this. A week ago, we're talking about the second straight month of dismal job numbers. A week later, we're talking about Bain and income tax returns. So the Obama campaign has had a nice run here, keeping Romney on his back foot.
Molly, what are the Democrats trying to do with this kind of multi-pronged attack on who Mitt Romney is and how much he earns, how much wealth he has?
Well, as you said, there's a few prongs to it, right? I mean, I think number one, they're just trying to fill in the picture before Romney has a chance to do it himself. He is the relatively recent nominee of the Republican Party. He's not very familiar to a lot of Americans, especially people who weren't voting in Republican primaries for the last couple of election cycles. People have a lot of questions about him. They want to know who he is. They have a relatively open mind, a lot of them at this point. And so the Obama campaign's job is to fill that void with as much negative information as they can. And then, as you say, this is all themed to wealth and money, whether we're talking about Romney's fundraising, whether we're talking about Romney's personal wealth and his business career and what he did there, whether we're talking about his donors and the super PACs, or whether we're talking about policy and what he wants to do on taxes.
Let's talk about his tax returns, because he has insisted, or at least so for now, that he's not releasing more than 2 years, even though other candidates, in fact, his father years ago released everything. What can that hold? Is that something that they're counting on to hold?
We saw this movie before during the primary when he similarly was hesitant to release his tax returns. He
also was attacked on the Bain connection.
Same issue, and he eventually gave in and he put out 1 year. He has since said that he's going to put out 1 more year, and that's going to be it. But the problem is in politics, if you keep saying no on this, it's hard to turn the page, so to speak, to move on to what you want to talk about, because the questions are still looming. Well, if you aren't releasing them, what are you afraid of? What is actually in there? And if you don't just put them out there, it's harder for him to move on and talk about what he wants to talk about, which is this president's handling of the economy, which here we are not talking about.
Well, in fact, that's what he said this morning, and when he talked on Fox, he said, let's pay attention, let's talk about his record. It's finally time. Is he finally doing that? Why this cronyism argument? That seems to be an unusual pushback.
This is actually the second time he's tried to bring up this issue, primarily of Solyndra. He did this back in May, I believe, and held a press conference in front of the closed Solyndra building out in California. The problem is it's a pretty transparent attempt to change the subject. I mean, as Jonathan sort of said, the way you put questions to rest in politics is you answer them. And if you don't answer them, people are going to assume that the answers are worse than the consequences of not answering them. When Romney did put out a year of his tax returns before, there was a lot of stuff in there that was damaging. There was the Swiss bank account, there was the tax shelters in Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, and that information was damaging to Romney.
But why isn't the cronyism charge, why isn't this Obama Solyndra the same as Romney's Bain? Why doesn't that seem to stick in the same way?
Oh, I think just because the questions about Romney and what he did and how he made his money is slightly more exotic. It's easier to sort of portray Romney as the sort of Gordon Gekko because of what he did. Whereas I think on the Obama question about Solyndra, there are certainly clear-cut questions out there that remain for the president that could ultimately be damaging. But I don't think it cuts the same way to the average voter who just sort of sees, well, politicians giving contracts. It just isn't quite as vivid as it is Cayman Islands, Swiss bank account for Romney. But here's the good news for Romney. The first Friday in August, there's going to be a jobs report. The first Friday in September, a jobs report. It's hard for this president to, talk about Cayman Islands, Swiss bank accounts when those things are coming down the pike here.
But when it comes to changing the topic, nothing can change the subject like getting a vice presidential running mate.
That's true. Right.
So is that actually moving along, or does it feel like if they're just trying, that every day there's a new name that's floated out, that floats to the surface, more timing that floats to the surface? Yeah. Does it feel like that's about distraction, or that's really going to happen?
I think it's a combination of both, and like you say, it does have to happen. It is probably going to happen soon-ish. I don't think this week, but in the next couple of weeks. And the speculation also is a way of changing the subject, right? Because we are hearing there's sort of a public vetting process that goes on parallel to the private vetting process, and that's this process of the trial balloons going up and the various interest groups saying who they like and they don't like, whether it's Rob Portman or Condi Rice. And so this is a very fruitful way to get people interested in the campaign and get them energized in a way that does not have to do with these other issues.
Matter of fact, I think the Romney folks have sent out 1, 2, or 3 emails saying, we're going to have, you can have dinner with Mitt's VP, even though we don't know who it is yet, if you send us some money.
I think it's about half a dozen, actually, those emails I've gotten at least. Look, they have a choice here. How badly do they want to change the subject? How bad is this current news cycle? Is it bad enough that they would shoot this bullet now and put out their VP to turn the page? Or do they still want to wait until August, wait until he goes on his foreign trip, which he is later this month, wait for the Olympics, and then in August, going into the convention, have your news? Because here's the challenge if you go in July. Going into the convention, if you don't have a VP pick as the news going in there, it gives all of
What
us
else do
in
you
the
got?
press, what else is there to cover in Tampa for the convention? What's the news? What's the hook? We're
You'll find something, I'm
well, we're
thinking,
going to
Jonathan.
be looking for Ron Paul mischief going on down there if there's no
I think
actual
that's gonna happen
news,
anyway.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it safe to say that both of you agree that this week, however, or at least the last 10 days, have constituted a shift of some kind, if only in velocity in this campaign?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think what we all expect from the sort of summer doldrums of the campaign is that there are a lot of sort of minor skirmishes, whether it's sort of war on women's stuff
Right.
or a lot of base motivating, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of Democrats, motivating the gay vote, the Latino vote, all these base groups, getting them excited and engaged so they start working for the campaign. And then in the fall, you start talking to those independent voters. But now with this attempt to define Romney, I think they really are speaking to the broader electorate in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect at this stage.
But if they're calling each other a liar or a felon now,
What's left?
What does that leave for October?
Well, we'll be there in October to find out. Jonathan Martin from Politico, Molly Ball from The Atlantic. Thank you both very much.
Thanks, Gwen.
Thank you.
And that's the News Hour for tonight. On Wednesday, we'll look at the Federal Reserve Board meeting coming at a time of heightened financial tensions in the U.S. and abroad. I'm Gwen Eiffel.
And I'm Jeffrey Brown. We'll see you online and again here tomorrow evening. Thank you and good night.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by Nordic Naturals, AT&T,
and by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, dedicated to the idea that all people deserve the chance to live a healthy, productive life.
and with the ongoing support of these institutions and foundations. And
this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Trusted, in-depth, independent.
This is ETV.